Okay, so this is my Chiles Rellenos recipe part 2. So in my other video, which I will leave the link in the description below so you can check out the full detailed video of how I make my Chiles Rellenos, I actually serve them without the caldo. But I love to put my Chiles Rellenos in caldo the next day for the leftovers. It allows me to heat it through, and it is a different way to eat them. So in this video, I just wanted to recap how I made my Chiles Rellenos, but I want to show you how I went from this to this. Now, I'm going to speed everything up, but I just wanted to recap the steps, and at this point, I am charring my Poblano peppers to make sure they are easier to peel the skin off. You don't want to skip that step. Then into a bag, and I'm going to allow them to sweat for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I will remove them from the bag, and the skin peels off just like that. After cleaning all of the skin, I make a slit and remove all of the seeds from the inside to clean all the seeds out. After all of my chili peppers were cleaned, I decided to stuff them with cheese and picadillo. And then once I stuff them, I'm going to use toothpicks to close them. Next, I'm taking 6 large eggs, separated the whites from the yolks. I'm going to beat the whites until stiff peaks, and then one by one add the yolks, continuing to beat them until I end up with a frothy egg mixture. Once my eggs were beaten, I dredged all of my stuffed peppers in all-purpose flour. Then I dipped it into the egg batter and right into a preheated pan of oil to fry. And that pretty much sums up how I make my Chiles Rellenos. And usually I like to serve them with Mexican rice, and I serve them without being in caldo because I like the texture of a crispy exterior. But my favorite way to have them as leftovers is in a caldo, and this is how I do it. Now, to make my tomato caldo or tomato soup for the Chiles Rellenos, I'm starting off with 6 Roma tomatoes, 3 cloves of fresh garlic, and a half of an onion. I roughly chop them, place them in a blender, and into the blender to get things moving along, I'm going to add 1 cup of water. You could also substitute the water with your favorite chicken broth or stock, but I chose to use water, and I'll season it later in the pan. Okay, so now that everything is blended, I'm now going to run it through a sieve, and this is going to remove the tomato seeds and tomato skin. Now, I will say this, when my grandfather would make this, he would not sieve it. He would just blend the tomatoes and toss it right into the pan, and guess what? It was just as good, so do what you like. Next, I am going to cook everything out in a preheated pan with oil. And this is where I'm going to add all of my seasonings and spices. So the first thing I am going to add is a couple of teaspoons. Here I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of chicken flavored bouillon, and this is the powder. You could add a bouillon cube. You could actually add chicken stock to the blender when you're blending everything, or you can just season with salt and pepper to taste. It's up to you. Next, I'm going to add some garlic powder. Again, this is to taste. Maybe start with 1/4 of a teaspoon and go up from there. I'm also adding some onion powder, the same amount to taste. Next, I'll be adding some freshly cracked black pepper and some ground cumin to taste. Again, I will put a good place to start in the description below with the ingredients, but ultimately it is up to your taste. After adding your seasonings and spices, taste it for salt, taste it for other seasonings that you want to add, because you are the one that's going to eat this, so do what you like. I am going to give everything a really good stir, and I'm just going to let it simmer and cook out for about 5 minutes. So it has been simmering for about 5 minutes. As you can tell, things have already mixed and combined well. So all there is left to do is to add my chiles rellenos. Now, here is what I prefer to do. I like to make caldo for my leftover chiles rellenos. And here they are. I had 2 left over, so I just made a pan of caldo, and this is what I am going to eat for lunch. Now, having said that, I do know that chiles rellenos typically is eaten in a tomato-based caldo. But I feel like if I'm doing all of the work to make chiles rellenos, then I want to enjoy a crispy texture right out of the pan. So this is why I choose to eat my leftovers, when there are leftovers, by the way. I like to reheat them in the caldo. I think it's the best way to reheat them and actually have something a little different the next day. So here they're in the pan. I'm going to cover it with a lid and allow it to simmer on a low heat for about 15 minutes. Okay, so it has been 15 minutes, simmering on a low heat, and I am ready to serve lunch. Okay, so I am ready to eat. Again, for the full detailed video of how I go through the process of making my chiles rellenos, please click the link below in the description area, and you will also find the ingredients there for this recipe. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you give this recipe a try, because I like to think it's a good place to start.